All right, welcome into Starting Nine here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick, here a couple times a week. My producer is Manny Chang. Make sure you check out the episode of Five on the Floor that Greg Sylvander did with Brian Fonseca after the game last night. Also, Hangover Time when the Miami Heat beat guys was on our channel after the Miami Heat beat the New York Knicks, move a little bit closer to that 5 spot and actually get into a virtual tie for the 6 spot with the Nets, who they play on Saturday. We'll get into that as we go forward here. Do want to mention a couple sponsors of this program. We always talk about Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100 at prizepicks.com. Or you can go to the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, download Prize Picks. We've got the NCAA tournament coming up this weekend. University of Miami is playing number 1 seeded Houston on Friday. Get your Prize Picks in for that as well. Of course, you can pair the NCAA tournament with the NBA, with the NHL, with MLS, with golf, with tennis, any of that good stuff. Go to prizepicks.com. Use the code 5 FIVE. Always mention this too. If you like our content, Prize Picks is now pretty much the primary driver of our content and our revenues. So we appreciate you doing the sign up there. And it's cool for you because you get free money as long as you use that code 5 FIVE to do your initial deposit. Also, another sponsor, All Pro Construction Builders. There's the Instagram page. You can check it out there. They also have a new website we're going to start showing you. It's allproconstructionbuilders.com. This is our guy Danny and his family. They do a great job. Again, it's a family business. They use American products. And what they do for you is they will get you your hurricane windows. You need the hurricane protection. Of course, it's just March, but it's just around the corner. We know when the storms start coming, the name storms, everybody freaks out, tries to get their shutters. They can do that for you too. But basically what they're going to do for you is get your house secured or your business secured. So go to All Pro Construction Builders, based in Dade County, but they service Monroe, they service Broward, service the entire area here. So reach out to Danny at 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. So the theme of this episode, theme of this season has been like, but still, like, okay, the Heat are doing this, but still, they're not shooting the ball well enough. Or the trade deadline's coming up, but still, it doesn't look like the Heat will do anything then. Or they get Kevin Love, but still, they still have a lot of weaknesses on the roster, and now that's made them weaker defensively. But could the new theme of the season be better late than never? Because we're watching the game last night, or I'm watching the game last night at the arena, and I'm seeing something I haven't seen most of the year. Intensity, purpose, connection. What are these things? This is a Heat team that has looked disconnected since pretty much training camp, hasn't been able to take consecutive steps forward. It's always been step forward, half a step back, step forward, full step back. But they're 7-3 in their last 10. They beat a good Knicks team. That's a good Knicks team. That's not a great team. It's a legitimate playoff team, though. The Knicks are in the top 8 in net rating in the league, even after last night. They are in the top 5, I believe, in offensive rating at this stage. They're good. They're not as good as maybe they think they are. Julius Randle got a little of that back in his face yesterday from Jimmy Butler, who was as talkative as I've seen him the entire year. Now, was that performance art because he had Dwayne Wade there? Or is he just in the mood? Because it kind of feels lately like Jimmy's just in the mood. He's now shooting over 59% in March. Over 59% in March. He's had one below 50% game in the entire month. He's playing at a LeBron level efficiency-wise. Not volume, but efficiency. And actually, Eric Spoelstra now has him, as Greg Sylvander pointed out last night, has him on the LeBron schedule where he plays the entire first and third quarters. So remember we were saying that they've been holding his minutes down and Spoelstra wouldn't really acknowledge it? Well, they're no longer holding his minutes down. Because last night, before he came back with about 6.5 left, he'd already played 30 minutes through the first 3 quarters. Typically, he's been going about 26 to 27 during this stretch where they've been kind of nursing him along. So it does seem like from the organization, from the coach, from the star players, from the role players, that they recognize the time is now. And so I know Heat fans are going to say, well, what the hell took so long? Well, I had conversations with a couple people in the locker room last night. First, I talked to UD, who obviously has his weekend coming up, 4 days of 40. Some of you might be at Family Fest. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on this show on the podcast side, because I had a conversation with Steve Stowe. So we're going to attach this for the podcast. And Family Fest comes up on Sunday, and it's the culmination of these 4 days of Udonis Haslam events, which actually, as we speak today on Thursday, start now. And I was talking to UD, and I will say this. People know I have a very long-standing, very good relationship with Udonis. I covered his first summer league with the Miami Heat. So been through a lot together and had a lot of conversations over the years. Yesterday was as happy as I've seen him the entire season after a game. I just said to him, I said, it looks better. And he goes, finally. And we just started talking about where the team is right now. And he started talking about catching Cleveland, or catching New York for 5, and the possibility of getting Cleveland in the first round. And that's the first time I've heard UD talk in a way about like, okay, we can actually do something this season. Because we've had a lot of conversations about how stale this has been, how frustrating it's been, how much of a reminder it's been from some of the other run-it-back seasons. Of course, UD was here for all of them. He was here for 06, 07, which came after the championship year. He was here for the year after the bubble. He's been here for all these years that kind of just went nowhere, in part because the roster got stale or ambitions changed among the same group of players or any of that stuff. But he seemed really positive yesterday. He liked what he saw. And when I mentioned him, I said, you guys took 5 charges tonight. He's like, really? I mean, that sort of stuff used to happen all the time. But that, to me, is a sign of effort. And then I had a conversation with Gabe Vincent, who was really good last night. He had 19 points. He didn't close the game. Kyle Lowry did because Kyle Lowry was also really good. They got, I think, was it 31 maybe points, or 29 or 31 points from their point guards last night. That does not happen regularly. And I was talking to Gabe just about, again, whether or not they're finally in a position now where they feel like everybody understands their role and they know what they're playing for. And what he said basically was, and I thought this was the best line any player has said to me this season. He says, we've all been living in last year. He volunteered that to me. We've all been living in last year. So what does that mean? It means that they expected it to come back and be exactly the same. They were one shot away from the NBA Finals. So why wouldn't you anticipate if you brought back the same core, you had Oladipo, you had Yurtseven, you were adding to this. By the way, both of them didn't play yesterday. If you had this group that was coming together with some additions from within in terms of, again, sort of the Vic factor, Yurtseven being another big, all that, why wouldn't you just be as good as you were last year or better? Why wouldn't the continuity help you? And so, again, we had an honest conversation yesterday. He said, well, one thing is everybody else got better. And so because they're trying to match up with you. And we talk about the offseason. Boston got better. Milwaukee got somewhat better. Philadelphia sort of changed its bench a little bit over the course of this year. The Knicks obviously got better with Brunson, so they took a big leap. And so in talking to Gabe about this, essentially he was like, we should have come in with the focus that we needed to get better too. And he wasn't talking about the organization adding pieces, although obviously that would have energized things a little bit. But he was talking about sort of the idea of them all sort of recognizing what they were going to be up against this year. And it feels like it's just taken forever for them to recognize it. The level of intensity that they needed to play at against teams that got somewhat more talented over the offseason. It's not just the better teams, too. I mean, their record against the worst 6 teams in the league, they've won fewer than 2 out of every 3 games against those teams. You should be winning 4 out of 5, 5 out of 6, 6 out of 7 against those kind of teams. An occasional slip up, but no more than that. If they simply had won 3 more games against the likes of the Spurs, the Pistons, the Hornets, the Magic, etc., right now they would be sitting in the 5 seed. They would have a shot at 4. But they didn't do that. So here they are. And again, to close the conversation with Gabe, he said, we were talking about run it back years. And I said to him, well, this has happened every time they've run it back. And he goes, yeah, I've been talking to people about that. Like, this is a topic of conversation on the team. Kind of like, what's happened? Why couldn't we get back to where we were? So now the question becomes, can they make something of this season now that they've come to this seemingly collective epiphany? Kyle Lowry is playing the role that, honestly, for the rest of his career, he's built for. The Heat early in the season were playing him so many minutes, he was in the top 5 in the league in minutes per game. He's got his 37th birthday coming up here next week. That never should have happened. Now, part of it was Gabe came out of training camp injured. Oladipo wasn't ready, and so Kyle had to play more minutes. But really, what Kyle is right now is an 18 to 24-minute-a-game player who can help settle your offense and can hit some occasional big shots. I really liked his approach last night. I've liked his approach since he came back, and I've been, I think, one of the more critical media members about him and his play so far this season. But he's been good. He has a role. Gabe starts. A lot of times, Lowry's going to finish. Oladipo got passed here. And, I think what's strange with Vic is that he's had, I guess you would call it 3 setbacks this season, where he was sort of moving forward. It started in training camp, then he got hurt, then again. And every time he's come back, his shot selection has gotten worse. It's almost like he couldn't find his fit anymore. And so he just started chucking up threes. There was a stretch of 6 games where he averaged 8.3 3-point attempts. That is the shot that other teams wanted the Heat to take. The ball ending up in Vic's hands and him either pounding it or taking the 3. Eric Spoelstra has made the tough decision. He's moved him out of the rotation, even though the Heat could use his defense. Kevin Love starts. I thought he played well last night, actually, and I haven't been a huge fan of the way he's played since he's come to Miami. I would grade him at a C. But I thought he played well last night. He threw his body around a little bit, made a couple of threes, made some pretty good passes. Everything was in the flow. And again, he's not going to close. So you have Gabe starting and you have Love starting now, and a lot of times they're not going to close. But the more important thing I think that they've established is a pecking order with the scoring. Jimmy is being more aggressive early. You've seen it lately. He's getting to the line. He's kind of taking the bull by the horns early. He's not letting the game kind of just come to him and figure it out. He's not waiting. And instead of it being everybody else having to carry early and then Jimmy saving them at the end, there's been a little bit more of Jimmy at least putting them in position early on and then Tyler helping to save them at the end. Hero last night with 14 points in the fourth quarter after he had only 8 through the first 3 quarters. He's hunting shots late in the game. They're finding ways to free him late in the game. And so there is a little bit more of a connection between him and Jimmy. I thought the ball movement between the two of them was better last night. The only guy, and I haven't mentioned him yet, the only guy on the team who seems to be finding a little bit of trouble finding the role he had earlier in the season is Bam. And I think we looked past it last night because he made so many critical defensive plays down the stretch of that game, which is really what he's there for the most. But if they're going to make a run here in the last 10 games of the season, they have to find a way to get Bam more involved offensively and more engaged offensively, more consistently than has been since the All-Star break. I put the blame on that on pretty much everybody. It's Bam a little bit. It's all the things we used to talk about. It's Bam a little bit. It's his coach a little bit, making sure he's getting the ball in spots where he's comfortable and he's going to be aggressive and he has no choice to be aggressive. And then it's also his teammates who struggle to get him the ball in those spots. But at least if you have Hero consistently playing that way in the fourth, and you have Jimmy being more aggressive throughout, you have Lowry understanding his role a little bit more. You have Gabe. Look, Gabe was 3 of 13 the 2 games prior to the last one. So there has been a lot of up and down there. But I think his defense has been better lately. His overall play has been better lately. You know what you're going to get from Caleb Martin at this point. You know that Kevin Love is kind of a part-time player just to kind of get you through. The Bam Love minutes are still not great, so that has to be sort of looked at. But also, you've seen Eric Spoelstra find sort of a rotation piece in Haywood Highsmith, who, and I know he doesn't like us to call him the backup 5. I guess you could say Love was playing the 5 there. But essentially, he's the extra big at 6'5", 6'6". And I think one of the things we've seen this season is that the Heat actually rebound better when they play smaller, which seems weird, but Bam gets more aggressive. So all of this is to say, do I have confidence that this team is going to make a run all the way up to the 5 seed now? No. They got a huge game coming up on Saturday against the Nets. They tend to drop games just when you feel like they're sort of getting things together. And so there probably will be a game or two here in the last couple weeks of the season where, like, there's no way they should lose that one, and they will find a way to lose it. So, yes, my confidence level is down from where it should be. But I do see some positives lately. And the biggest positive that I've seen is it seems like they finally give a damn. To me, it starts there. Like, we can talk about the lack of sort of premier talent around Jimmy and Bam, and to a certain extent around Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler. We can talk about, the fact that they should have added in the offseason, that they need another 3-level scorer, that they need another premium rebounder, that Bam needs help, whatever. We can talk about all of these things, that they shouldn't ask Jimmy to carry so much. But this team showed last year, virtually the same team that they had this year, that when they are connected and when they are engaged, they can be a really difficult team for other teams to beat, because they have a lot of different ways they can go. And again, so much of it comes down to shooting, but it also comes down, again, to just want to. Will they shoot 59% consistently? No. So what I liked the best last night was stepping up to take the charges, feeding off the crowd, making sure the ball continued to move throughout the entire game. So I'm a little bit more confident after last night that at least we're going to see a representative effort against the Nets. And on paper, even though the Nets have played pretty well since the Durant and Kyrie moves, and even though Mikal Bridges has developed into kind of a borderline star at this point, on paper, the Heat have the better roster than the Nets have currently. So Saturday, they just got to get a win. All right, we're going to do a lot more over the next couple of days. Appreciate everybody joining. Manny Chang producing today. We will get your comments up in the future, I promise that. I want to thank our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders. Go to allproconstructionbuilders.com. The website is up. We'll throw a couple of these up at the end here. William Craven, finally feel pretty good about this team. It's taken most of the year, but the fire is lit. Maybe so. Dwayne Wade being there doesn't hurt. By the way, Dwayne just in for a night or two. He's leaving. He had dinner with Udonis and he left, so he won't be there forever. Let me try to read this one here. When playoff Jimmy is activated, it feels like it hinders Bam and Tyler. Their shot attempts and aggressiveness are down. Jimmy is almost hijacking the game in a positive way since we are winning. I just think he needs to do it early. I think he needs to establish tone. He doesn't need to, quote-unquote, hijack the game the entire game. But I think that he sets the tone. When he's aggressive early, when he's not kind of just letting the game come to him, I do think the team actually feeds off him. I don't feel like they look at him like, oh, no, Jimmy is taking my shots. I really don't feel that way. I do feel there's a little of that when Tyler kind of takes over. But I think with Jimmy, there's such a trust level there that they're fine when he's aggressive. Well, they know when he's in that kind of mood. And we saw it last night. And again, I don't know if it's because Dwayne was there. He was getting into it with the officials. He was getting into it with Randall. I talked to someone afterwards who's close to Jimmy who was saying Randall was doing all that talking after the last game. So why can't Jimmy talk after this one? He internalizes these kind of things. Thanks for the super chat there. We appreciate it. Getting free agent DeRozan in 21 solved the problems. Which who got DeRozan in 21? Oh, the Bulls? Okay, I'm not sure. Oh, I understand what you're saying. If they've been able to pay DeMar, well, they didn't have the money to pay DeMar. Unfortunately, they all they could offer him at that point was the mid-level, and we saw him basically get the max. If you are on the podcast channels, I had a conversation with Steve Stowe about what's going on here with Heat Family Fest coming up on Sunday. They still have tickets available on Heat.com. I'll be out there. I may end up in the dunk tank or something along those lines. Some of you have wanted to do that for a little while. But more information on that with Steve Stowe. That's coming up here on the podcast channel. New 5 on the floor later tonight. Have a good day. Have a good night. Again, the Heat are in the mix. We'll see if they can win Saturday against the Nets.